Week 12 of the fantasy football season is already here, and this week we get 3 Thanksgiving Day games too. To help you make all those best decisions for your starting lineups, we're bringing in Michael Fabiano, Sports Illustrated Senior Fantasy Analyst. Fabs, as usual, we need help. It's getting close. The fantasy playoffs are just right there, but we gotta nail it down this week. So, who should we start at the quarterback position? I think you probably like some guys that are well rested.
Let's start with Tua Tagovailoa. And the matchup on paper, Jen, is not good. Houston's actually been tough on quarterbacks. Why? Because teams run the ball down their throats, and we're going to talk about that in the running back portion of this video. But I'm still playing Tua Tagovailoa against the Houston Texans. They've still given up big stat lines to Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones. So I feel pretty confident in Tua coming off the bye. And then Geno Smith. Hey, he's back, right? I still can't believe it. It's week 12, and we are talking about Geno Smith being a startable asset in fantasy, but it's absolutely the case. He's got the Raiders this week. They've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. In fact, their defense has allowed 17 plus points to all but 2 quarterbacks this year in 10 games. So start Geno.
There's a lot going on in Denver right now. They released Melvin Gordon. There are rumors that Nathaniel Hackett could be on the hot seat, and you say, no way, no how. Do you want to start Russell Wilson this weekend?
I know that it's the holiday season, and, you got to be nice. I can't be nice. Russell Wilson stinks. I don't know what's going on. The last 2 weeks, he's played the Titans, and he couldn't do anything. And then the Raiders, and he couldn't do anything. His numbers are brutal. Jerry Jeudy is banged up. I can't play him right now. It's not even that the matchup is terrible, although Panthers' defense is underrated, in my opinion. I can't play Russell Wilson. In fact, if I'm in a 1-quarterback league, I'm cutting him. I'm done. It's 11 games now. I just can't do it anymore. And then Aaron Rodgers, who's actually had 2 good games in a row, 19 plus points in 2 straight games, his 2 best games of the year. But now he's got to go to the city of brotherly love, where they don't give up many fantasy points to quarterbacks. In fact, no team in the National Football League has allowed fewer points to opposing signal callers than the Philadelphia Eagles. So Aaron Rodgers is going on the bench.
Moving over to the running back position, Faz, I looked at your list and I thought this must have been painful for you to write for this video, because I know that you've come out firmly on the side of one of your sick running backs being the better running back for the season. But we'll get into that. You guys be sure to check out Michael Fabiano's Twitter page, because you'll get to see him wearing a replica helmet on his head because he lost a bet. Who are you starting? Who should you start that could be a better running back than Donta Foreman the rest of the season this season?
And the wager was rest of season. I like Foreman better than Jeff Wilson, but how do you not like Jeff Wilson this week? Like, I still like him.
Right.
He's got Houston, right? You put Jen Piacenti in the backfield against the Texans, she's running for 70 and a touchdown. I guarantee it. They've given up the most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Jeff Wilson's been very good since joining the Dolphins. Now, he's had a couple of really good matchups against the Bears and the Browns, but still, take advantage of them and play Jeff Wilson Jr. And then I'm also going to play Antonio Gibson against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Gibson's numbers aren't monstrous, right? He's not putting up massive numbers, but 13 plus points in 4 of his last 6 games. Atlanta's defense since week 8 has given up an average of more than 27 fantasy points per game to enemy running backs. So Gibson is in our good graces. I am flexing him this week.
Yeah, Gibson also exceeded our player prop last week. He looked good with Taylor Heineke, and with no, J.D. McKissick all banged up, and Gibson's getting so much opportunity. Now, we're going to go to the running backs that you're going to sit this week, and I just have one thing to say. Hello, special teams points. Can I get some for last week for Cordarrelle Patterson? You say, you know what? No, it's probably going to be bad luck again this week. Just sit him.
And if you want to hear a rant about that this week, make sure you check out my show on SiriusXM, Fantasy Dirt. But Cordarrelle Patterson, since he's come back from the knee injury, that 1 good game, and since then he's been in committee. 18 combined touches in his last 2 games, and he's a risk this week against the Commanders. Hey, this defense is playing really well. The 2nd fewest points allowed to running backs since week 8. So Patterson is a risky flex at best, and so is D'Onta Foreman. Listen, I love him, okay? And the schedule in the fantasy playoffs, it's really good. But this matchup is not good. So he's a risk-reward flex for me against the Broncos, who've held guys like Derrick Henry, Rashad Penny when he was healthy, and Dameon Pierce to fewer than 10 fantasy points. So unfortunately, this is not going to be a good work for D'Onta Foreman. I still like him long-term, though.
Yes. So to be clear, we love Donta Foreman, just maybe not for this week's lineups. Okay, moving over to wide receiver, Christian Kirk and Michael Pittman maybe to go with Matt Ryan?
Yeah, and Christian Kirk's been on fire. Before the bye week, 53.1 combined fantasy points in his last 2 games. Now, you look at the Ravens and you think, wait, that's a tough defense, right? I mean, not so much. They've given up the 3rd most points to slot receivers, which is where Kirk runs about 70% of his routes. So get him into your lineup this weekend. And then Michael Pittman Jr., he's been a sit-him the last couple of weeks. His numbers been okay. He's averaging right around 13 points per game, but I think he can really bust out against the Steelers on Monday night. Their defense has allowed 14 touchdowns and the most fantasy points to enemy wide receivers. So Michael Pittman Jr. with Matt Ryan back, thank you, Jeff Saturday, is a very nice wide receiver too.
Things we never thought we'd say. Thank you, Jeff Saturday. Okay, sit wideouts. You're going to help me out here and tell me just don't start DJ Moore, which I appreciate. And are we worried about Justin Fields' shoulder at all because you're also sitting Darnell Mooney?
Yeah, let's start off with DJ Moore. I remember like a few weeks ago with PJ Walker under, so he was putting up good numbers. And I'm like, ooh, maybe he's back now. Well, Walker's banged up. Baker Mayfield's just not a good quarterback. And over the last few weeks, 16.7 combined fantasy points in his last 3 games. That is not good. The Broncos defense has given up 5 touchdowns all year long and the 3rd fewest points to opposing receivers. So DJ Moore is a guy that I just can't trust. Can't really trust many Panthers this week. And then Darnell Mooney, this is more about the matchup, right, against the Jets and Sauce Gardner, who's really been one of the top corners in the National Football League. Look at the numbers. Their defense, the Jets, have allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and the position has a 59.9% catch rate. That's not good. So Darnell Mooney, with or without Justin Fields, is going to be on the bench.
All right, moving over to the tight end position because we got to help the people. And by the people, I mean me, Fabs. I need help here. This is awful. Okay, who can I start at tight end? Who do you say we can bank on these guys?
Tight end's a dumpster fire within a dumpster fire right now. And Pat Freiermuth, I mean, hey, he's put the fire out for some of us out there in fantasy land. He's putting up very good numbers, had a big game last week. He's got the Colts coming up this week. This defense has allowed 9 or more fantasy points to 7 tight ends, and tight ends have a 75.4% catch rate against this defense. So start Pat Freiermuth and start David Njoku. Now, I get it. He came back last week. The numbers weren't great. It was his first game back. I like the matchup, though, against the Buccaneers. They've allowed the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends, and also the catch rate against them, 73.2%. That's pretty good. So Njoku is a top 12 player this week among tight ends.
And which tight end, if I had the luxury, am I leaving on my bench?
This is the problem. Anybody who's worth anything, you got to play because the position's so thin. So I'll give you one. Robert Tonyan against the Eagles. Don't like the matchup at all. He's kind of been phased out of the offense, too. I mean, look at his numbers. Fewer than 4 targets here in 4 of his last 5 games. He's not been involved. Eagles at home. It's just a bad matchup for Robert Tonyan. No Funyan starting him this week. And then Cade Otton, who actually had some vanity value a few weeks ago. But then in the overseas game in Germany, well, we saw Cameron Brate come back, and that was a problem because Otton's targets went down. And also keep this in mind, the Browns have allowed just 1 touchdown and the 4th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. Guys, I know telling you to sit Robert Tonyan and Cade Otton may not be the best advice, but it's all I got for you right now. If you've got any tight ends who are worth anything, you almost have to play them because the position is a mess right now.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I have to play Robert Tonyan in at least 1 league, but I'll just cross my fingers and pray and hope we get through this. It is a full slate of games this week, no teams on bye. That means it is a little trickier sometimes actually to do those start-sit decisions. They can get a little tougher, but don't worry. We have updated rankings at all times. You can find them at si.com/fantasy. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because we're with you all the way to the finish line.